I wanted to talk and expand upon my idea for Generation 3 Bionicle being a system theme. Talk about why I think that gives it the most chance of survival. Before I get into that, I want to go ahead and show you one more 3D print that I did not show you in the last video because I chalked it up to being a failure, but I was able to get it to work, and it is this piece right here. I actually attempted to dye it, but it did not accept the dye very well. That's okay. This is the Stronius ankle guard that I came up with. Axle hole is a tad bit too small here, so I'm not using that, but that's fine because I designed it with pinholes in there as well, and those work just fine. Still a really neat looking piece, and it fits lovely on here, so very happy with how it came out. But anyway, let's get right on into it. And I did write down a handful of points, as well as actually even pull up another set that you guys have not seen yet. However, I don't believe this is the final version of it. I think there are a couple things that might be missing here. Don't quote me on that, of course. That said, this is the Deep Jungle set, and yes, that is a nod to Exoforce, and this is the, well, air-themed set for this wave. It is also storming, so if you hear thunder or rain, I apologize. All right. Without further ado, let's go ahead and talk, and you'll be seeing more of this picture here in a handful of minutes. First and foremost, what do I think are the strengths of this theme, and what potentially gives it its best chances? Well, I think that this has to be a dedicated theme that honestly really leans into the fan service. As greedy as that may seem, here's the thing. One of the reasons I think system works for Bionicle, and when I say works, I mean from a business standpoint for LEGO, is that it is just about the least risk possible for a Generation 3 Bionicle. On top of that, if you use the story or the characters from Generation 1, you really don't even have to incentivize or invest a lot of money into the development of a new story either. So it's kind of a win-win. You're playing off the nostalgia of course, kids who you are inherently marketing to now as adults, but also people who are kids today, I think would still see this product and like it. Now, it is also a board game, and maybe that's not necessarily what kids are doing all of the time, but adults do tend to play board games. I know I do, introverts especially, right? But it's nice to see it. However, none of these sets need to function primarily as a board game, though I'll talk about that in a moment. In terms of the fan service, what I mean is that Generation 1 is absolutely the best place to start. In fact, I would even say 2001. Here's the thing. LEGO knows what years sold the best for Bionicle. 2001 through 2003 were among the best, if not the best selling years for the theme, as far as I'm aware. And I think they had the broadest appeal with the broadest, let's say, location value, right? Because it is a nondescript island, essentially, meaning you can kind of make whatever you want. That's not to say that, you know, a place like Metronui wouldn't be exciting. In fact, I think it would be. But let's tamper down our expectations here for a moment. Stamp down our, you get what I'm saying. Here's the thing. I think that fan service is strong here because you are going to be selling to adults who are most likely interested in your product already for nostalgia purposes, if nothing else, and for the board game aspect as well, but also for these characters. While kids at the same time, honestly, the differences between minifigure Tahu and minifigure, you know, Jalar Mari are going to mostly be the mask and the weapon. Yeah, the print on the torso and the color scheme be different too, but it's still using minifigure legs, minifigure hips, bodies, arms, hands. And so really there's not a lot of change there. I think there are things you can do to accentuate that, armor and things, but I'm not going to get into that even here. At its core, I think that leaning into the nostalgia, leaning into the fan service, giving people what they want, and I know not everybody wants the same thing. Not everybody's favorite year is 2001 through 2003, but I do think it has the broadest chance of success, if for no other reason than to say, oh, a 20-something's anniversary, whatever, right? On top of that, as you saw in this picture here, these sets are not just a diorama that happens to be a board game, but doesn't need to be. They also include a small animal build, a small Rahi build, in this case in the form of the Karini, which has a function very similar to the Nui Rama. Because of that, this is a hybrid build, meaning that it is built with both System and Technic as their own dedicated creations. And as LEGO has been doing more and more, they've been trying to incentivize builds where more people come together and create the product, right? Several times where they've bagged items in one set separately and included multiple building instructions so that two people can build at the same time. And I think that really works here as well because this is a board game, because it means that people can get into this. The hail's going to distract me, but anyway, that people can get into this and not only play the game with multiple people, but build the game with multiple people. It would go faster for one thing, but it also means that there's an experience for everybody involved. Moving on from that, I wanted to talk about affordability because in the last video I talked about the Avalanche Mountain, which is a really cool build, but a lot of people pointed out that that's a pretty expensive one and it needs to be cheap. And you're right. That is essentially the flagship set. It would be expensive, though I want to stress, in fact, if LEGO was ever going to do a theme like this, that honestly, Bionicle benefits by being one of the cheapest themes on the market. Or at least it should be, in relation to other LEGO themes. So, does it mean LEGO takes a pay cut here? Sure. I don't think that they need to make a loss, of course. They should profit from these items, but I think they can make less. And, in fact, here, the way that I design this uses a lot of pieces that exist in LEGO already. Maybe some recolors, sure, but recolors are a lot less expensive than new molds. And there are only a handful of new molds here, many of which will show up over and over again, and several will be used or could be used in other themes outside of Bionicle as well. So what about story then? Well, for one thing, this takes place in Generation 1, so you have all that to build off of. Of course, doesn't mean you can't retcon or change things around. Change the order of when things happen or where things happen, that's fine. Let people build their own stories. But, as I mentioned, with two sets of instructions, one arguably is going to be smaller than the other, maybe at the end of that instruction, have a little comic in there. Bionicles have traditionally included comics. If not in the Bionicles themselves, then you could get them free from LEGO by joining the LEGO Club. And of course, Generation 2 Bionicle actually introduced the comics in the instructions and on the back of the box. Little things, sure, but it was something. Now in this case here, I think there needs to be some dialogue. I think it needs to look a little less corporate, let's be honest, than Generation 2. And also, name the characters. But again, hopefully LEGO has learned this stuff already. Many of these characters already have names, are already established, so don't alienate that, but you don't have to lean too heavily on it either. So what about the gameplay? Well, that is going to be a dedicated video because it is going to be a long video, and I really want to stress and make sure that I have playtested this thoroughly. I am not a game designer, so there are going to be things that I've overlooked, but suffice to say, it needs to be a game that is just fun to play, engaging but simple enough to pick up and understand. At the same time, something else I thought of that could add value, and I don't think this is strictly necessary, but is foregoing the system build entirely and creating a tabletop game with just the minifigures, the dice, whatever little accessory pieces that might come in a set, tokens, what have you, and the Rahi, and utilizing just those to play out your own little tabletop RPGs and fantasies. I think that is a nice little extra that you have there. On top of that, though, I think you also get a lot of added value out of having things like the pods, because as I talk about with the affordability of this theme, some of these sets are pretty inexpensive. The desert theme, for example, which is the one set that has 3 characters instead of 4, I believe. I may have changed that, though. But at the same time, pods are designed to basically get you out there just buying one thing. With these sets, I designed 6 large box sets. Each of them is an independent game that can be played in and of itself, but can also be expanded upon with other games, with other sets. The pods hold true to this as well, though they are not their own playable game, at least not per se. Maybe I could come up with a way to do that. They are at the very least an addition to the game you have, adding at least one new character, of course, in some cases adding a new colored mask, which maybe could be a MacGuffin to go after, and of course, as well, adding the actual game piece itself. Each of the 6 villages not only includes a large box set, but has 2 pods associated with it for a total of 12. That's at least where I stand right now. I could definitely see them just combining the pods together, making them maybe $15, and you get 2 figures, a little side landscape build, and a Rahi, right? Because one pod is focused on gameplay, so it is a landscape, a scene of some kind, while one pod is Rahi focused. That way you have something to buy depending on what you like, what you prefer. And my idea, ideally, is that these pods would be, around the $7 mark, maybe in their own little plastic container as a nod to the original Toa. Lego could do it, but that's not the point here. Overall, one of the main focuses about this, one of the main reasons why I think this takes the least risk, and that's not to say that there wouldn't be hurdles, there will, and we'll talk about that, is that this is kind of something for everyone. Not everybody is going to enjoy every single set, of course, but you can't please everyone. If you could, Lego would make a lot more money than they do already. But this is also less of a risk because it is established characters within an established story, within an established world, really. But it is still a world that is open to interpretation. And on top of all that, there's just less unique molds here. Molds are arguably going to be one of the most expensive things about making a new theme or a revival. In this case, there are about 13 to 14 masks. A couple of those are sort of spoilers, but with that, about 10 weapons, maybe 11, depending on if the, Kopaka shield was this piece or something else, and only about 5 system pieces. These are pieces that can be used outside of this Bionicle theme, one of which being this piece right here, of course, which is just a larger version of something that Lego already makes, one being a sort of flower petal piece that can attach to plates, but also has a really interesting feature, and in fact, I designed it for this feature. That'll be in a separate video as well, and one of these pieces is a masonry brick, in fact, a set of 3. A 1x1 brick that is 1 brick tall, a version that is 3 bricks tall, and a version that is 5 bricks tall. Very similar to standard bricks of those sizes, but with the masonry details on all 4 sides. That is something that's very easy to use in like Creator and of course other themes as well, but it plays into here, and it's not even strictly necessary. It's literally used as a detail on, I think, 1 set. But it's a fun piece to have, and I think Lego could make use of it. With all of that, in terms of the hurdles itself, I understand that there are going to be people that are not satisfied with this. There are going to be people who think Bionicle needs to be a system of its own. And while I can understand that perspective, creating a new system is difficult. It's time consuming, it's expensive just to brainstorm it, just to troubleshoot it before the actual production of the pieces themselves, and then the pieces cost a lot. Plus there's a large input in terms of investment, right? Getting into it is expensive because to create an entire new system means you need a foundation to build upon, and it's expensive to make that. We saw this with Hero Factory's introduction of CCBS. The first year of CCBS introduced a lot of new pieces, but you saw that we were pretty lacking on the helmet molds and, of course, even the helmets for the villains, which were often double-sided because it saved a mold. We did, of course, get those little, like, mask helmet accessory things, which were weird and gross, and nobody likes them. But anyway, Ordeal of Fire is a weird year. But suffice to say, CCBS in and of itself, it's an expensive theme to develop. But every theme is. The development is the thing that takes the money, right? The production of the initial molds to make a theme take a lot of money. Once those molds are created, it's a bit cheaper down the road, of course, and there's obviously going to be troubleshooting. And again, I am not a designer. I don't work for Lego, so I don't know what I'm not thinking of here, I can't solve all the problems. I alone cannot save Bionicle or bring Bionicle back. That's not the point of any of this. Lastly, the reason I'm doing all of this is I enjoy it. It's fun. This G3 project is something that I took on last year, and I had a blast. These were my first ever system mocks, really. I mean, I've built with system before, but never to this scale. And to have seen that I designed an entire wave of sets, essentially well over, I think, 6,000 pieces, maybe even more than that, hurts my brain. But it's the passion that goes into it that I think is the most exciting. There's one other thing I wanted to go ahead and showcase here, which you also saw in the previous video, but it is now without its little stud on the back since that was giving me problems. Oh, and I dropped it again. I did that twice. I did that last video too, but it is this Kakama right here, 3D printed. That is it to scale. Does it fit anything? No. I took the stud, anti-stud thing off the back of it because it was just a mess, but it is cute. And the details on it are so precise. I'm so happy with it. So if I can see this on a minifigure, as minifigure scale Kakama as it is, wouldn't you love something like this on store shelves right now? I understand, lastly, that there are colors that Bionicle used in the past that no longer exist. Old purple, for example. And I'm okay with the recolors. If we were to get an Onipu or a Nui Jaga in purple, I'm okay with dark purple, with the newer, 2006 or whatever when it came out, version of those colors. I'm not asking LEGO to introduce any new colors. I just want, if this was to be a thing, I don't know what I want. I think that's the realization. We don't always know what we want. And we're not always going to be happy with what we're given. But if a product like this existed on shelves right now, I'd buy it. I know I would. I think a lot of you might too, so long as it's affordable. So, with all that being said, if you did enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe because it tells the algorithm you want to see more stuff like this. And of course, join in the conversation down in the comments below, or check out the Discord, Instagram, or Patreon if you want to support the channel and get a couple of perks. And I will see you all in the next one. Take care.